The True Ambition podcast with John Zink is brought to you by IT Avalon. IT Avalon, IT staffing and professional services done right. Visit our sponsor at itavalon.com. Now, welcome to True Ambition.
Hey everybody, welcome to the True Ambition podcast. My name is John Zink, and I'm very happy to be joined today by Wendy Pfeiffer. And she is the CIO of Nutanix. And she also sits on the board of Qualys, and is it SADA Systems or SADA? SADA Systems.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also, she's the past CIO and VP at GoPro. And she was the head of advanced development division at Yahoo. So you've had some very interesting positions, to say the least.
I did. I always kind of follow my head and my heart wherever I work. I loved GoPro's products. I loved Yahoo's mission. I love Nutanix, where I am now as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk about all of them here in just a few minutes, but just want to talk about a couple of things before you and I start having a conversation here. Wendy has been named one of Silicon Republic's tech titans. She got an Orby for Bay Area Enterprise CIO of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fisher Center for Data Analytics named her CIO of the Year. Those are pretty big deals, so congratulations.
Thank you. One of the ones I'm proudest of is the National Diversity Council named me one of the top most influential women in tech, and that matters a lot given the mission of the Diversity Council. Yeah,
that's big. One of the questions, I'll dive into it right now, but in an industry that is so heavily male driven,
mm-hmm.
How is it to be a strong leader woman in that industry?
So you noticed I'm a woman. Good.
I did.
You know what? I will tell you that for most of my career, the fact that I was a woman was not a thing for me or for any of the places where I worked. I wasn't like the other folks, but that was for a lot of reasons, not just my gender. Only recently, maybe it's my advanced age or the fact that I'm pretty senior, has, the universe reached out to me and said, hey, you need to represent. There's, little girls who want to be like you someday, and they want to know, how you got there and what that's all about. And so what I can tell you is that I've always worked with all my heart and with all my brain. I am deeply interested in what I do, and I happen to be a nerd and a techie and a Trekkie. I think I just show up as someone who's interested and engaged and so on. I would say that is advice for anyone. At the same time, I'm aware of the fact that for a lot of men that I work with, the fact that I am female is a thing. And sometimes it's a positive thing, and sometimes it's a negative thing. Ultimately, most of us as human beings, we are separate alien creatures from each other. We really are. We first sort of see our differences. We try to connect around the things that we have in common. But most of us, male, female, any gender, any race, we're sort of running our own game. We're sort of on our own little island. And the key is being able to connect with the people that you need in order to get stuff done. And being able to see all the people available to you, no matter what their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their political party, their religion, being able to see all those people around you who can help with the aim of your company or your team or your project, and connect with those folks. That's the key, and that's what separates leaders from followers.
I love it. Yeah, it's the question I had was like, and I love the answer because I think it's all about the way that you position yourself. And if you take a positive outlook instead of a pessimistic outlook, there's no doubt that there's been things in the past where women weren't treated fairly or evenly. And it probably still happens to this day, but it's something we're working on. And it's just great to see strong women leaders that are paving the way. Because my mom, it's like she raised me in a small town in the Midwest. Without her, I would be nowhere, figuratively and literally, But it's like, it's so many times, I hear so many stories from different people that, women are the ones who really just make things happen. And in this tech-driven world where there's so many men involved, I've been in it for about 25 years. I own a tech recruiting company, an IT staffing company. And slowly, I just see kind of women taking over and moving into those leadership roles. And it's so refreshing because we need that diversity in the workplace to make everything run smoothly.
Yeah. And I think women in leadership is a big deal because the next step after diversity is equity. And equity is something that, women are playing the catch-up game around. But as more women enter leadership roles across all industries, then, we tend to create organizations that are more diverse, and that then leads to more equity, more women in leadership, and, wash, rinse, repeat. I will say though, I don't know that I am on the same page as all of my peers on this topic, but I'm looking forward to the entrance of Gen Z into the workplace. This new generation, fully digital native generation that's entering the workplace. These folks are also very identity neutral, maybe because they come from this digital space where identity is based on not so much on who you know, but perhaps what you know or your degree of connectedness. And so this is a real hope for the future because status, contribution, even just rank. Those things aren't based on what you look like or who you know in this new generation, but they're based on achievement, and they're based on persistence and things like that. And so I think we may just completely obviate any advice I could give to folks about being female and having a career in tech in the next 10 years or so as a new generation joins the workforce. Meanwhile, I have noticed there are a lot of men in tech and a lot of men in positions of leadership. And one thing I've tried really hard to do throughout my career and in my life in general is to show up authentically as myself. I noticed that a lot of women who are in senior leadership positions essentially take on mannish traits. I'm being super stereotypical here, but you don't have to be tough, authoritative, ambitious in order to be successful. I am feminine. I'm a mom. I love to cook. I also am a pretty badass technologist. And all of those things can live together side by side harmoniously, and still don't diminish the fact that I'm a leader. I'm a good technologist. I'm a good CIO. I'm a good corporate board member. So I think it's really important to, more than anything else, show up as ourselves. And then, ultimately, if you just keep showing up every day, eventually they have to give it to you. That's my theory.
Yeah. Honesty and truth go a long way,
Yeah. And we suck at anything other than that anyway, right? People who come across as disingenuous, they tend to, sort of distance themselves from other people. As a leader, you can't make people do things. Unless you're, like a despot or something. But, as a leader, you can't make people do things. They have to want to follow. And so you have to be headed in a direction that people want to go, and you have to be worthy of them following you. And disingenuous, self-conscious, mean-spirited people tend to not be followed, with some notable exceptions.
Yeah, and they kind of distance themselves, probably with the fear of being found out.
Yeah.
Because so much fear involved in all those things. If you're living a lie, there is nothing but fear involved in every move you make. Where if you're honest and true and humble, then you're an open book, and people can believe in that. So I wholeheartly agree with you.
Yeah. I think that's the key, and it's not always easy to show up that way, especially when you flub something. But at the end of the day, that's the only skill I have, is to show up every day.
Well, even when you when you or me or anybody else, when you flub something, when something happens and you take ownership in it and you go and fix it right away and work the problem, from clients, coworkers, whatever, you get so much respect back by just facing it and taking it head on, and really gain the respect around you, even if you do screw something up.
Yeah, no one ever asks me in these podcasts, like, have you ever been fired from a job because you really, really deserved it? And, somehow that's never in like the senior leader, but yes, I have. Thank you for asking.
I have too, and it was a great move because that's when I started my company. So I'd like to thank her for firing me. That was great.
To thank that so-and-so for firing you.
No, I probably deserved it. But one of the things I wanted to bring up here is you're a Minnesota Vikings fan.
Yes, I am.
So am I. I moved out to California about 15 years ago from Minneapolis, and I brought the Purple Pride with me.
Awesome. Wow. I don't meet many of you out here. So
I know there's very few of us out here, and I'm the person yelling "Skol" at the TV every weekend, and watching.
I have a story about why I am a Minnesota Vikings fan.
I was going to ask you, so please do tell.
So when I was 12 years old, my parents trusted me to take my first babysitting job, and it was a little boy next door, and his dad on Monday nights had to go do something or other, and so I would go next door and babysit this little boy. And I discovered Monday Night Football back in the era of John Madden, and even before John Madden. And back in the day, the Vikings were just a beautiful team to watch. But also, this was back in the time where Madden and others would really explain what was happening. They would explain the plays, and there'd be the X's and O's. And of course, this was before the live, circling of players, but they'd lay out the X's and O's and so on. And this little boy was very into football too. And so, I just learned, I just sort of soaked this up. And as I soaked it up, I kind of got a very, a very Vikings-centric, maybe a little bit, I hate to mention this, cheesehead-centric view of football, but really that sort of offense, that sort of defense, back in the days of some amazing players. And so I started following the Vikings, and I wanted them to win. And from that day to this, they have not won the Super Bowl. And so I'm not one to give up. I am remaining a faithful Vikings fan until the day that they win the Super Bowl, hopefully in my lifetime, although I ain't getting any younger.
Well, I just, one of the first NFL players that was on this podcast was Robert Smith.
Oh, there's been NFL players on this podcast?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, wow. Robert Smith, Minnesota running back, was on here about 3 months ago.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
If you ever want to have another, Minnesota player and me on at the same time, I would totally love it.
I'll see what I can do. Now, you're also a Warriors fan.
I am. Yes.
So tell me what you like about the Warriors.
Oh, everything. First of all, I love basketball, and I guess I like a hard luck story. You know, the Warriors, I mean, we were terrible forever, like forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And then we kind of, finally we got good. But I was a fan before. I'm a very happy fan now. I love the work ethic. I love I'm a huge fan of some of the guys who play. Guys like Steph Curry, who are, he's an admirable human being. He's motivated by his faith and his family, and guys like Steve Kerr. But mainly it's just the game. Watching the Splash Bros, watching just everyone on the team, including Draymond. Every single one of them are just a first class players in their own right, and play with courage and with heart, and it's super, super fun to watch. Even when they don't win the game, it's still a fun game to watch. They're also like super haphazard on their way to every single victory, and so I like the suspense of every game.
Yeah, they're a fun team to watch. I'm not a huge basketball fan. I've been to a couple of Warriors games with clients, and just fun. I mean, it's a fun atmosphere. It's a fun team to watch. Yeah. And it's interesting to see them kind of in the ups and downs that they're going through right now. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be fun to see where they end up. Now, you're a Star Trek fan, like we talked about before. I've got a couple of questions for you.
All right.
What is Chekhov's first name?
Interesting. Anton?
Pavel
Chekhov. Sorry. Yeah. You know what? And my husband and I just finished watching the entire first series. We've just gone into the Next Generation. We're super bored in COVID, so we said, let's watch every Star Trek episode from the very, very beginning. And right now we're just arguing over, do we watch the appropriate movies in between each series?
Oh, right.
He wants to. I want to go right into Next Generation.
So then my next question is Kirk or Picard?
Absolutely Picard. I mean,
that's what Ed said too.
Yeah. And it's so interesting watching both the series in juxtaposition. It's so clear that Picard is the Shakespearean, Patrick Stewart is the Shakespearean actor, right, as compared to Kirk. I will say that I had neglected to truly understand the level of 60s awesomeness in the first series. I mean, Kirk got every female, alien or not, within the first 3 minutes. You just knew. He sort of had the power of like the Austin Powers fembots, just like, walked in the room and I was like, woo, but Picard kind of has to work for it a little bit more, so I like him. He's an introvert, clearly. I'm watching the first couple of episodes where, he doesn't want to see children on anywhere on board the ship. And so I'm enjoying his discomfort and his introvertedness, but also he's super hot.
So I found out that your husband is a musician, as am I and Ed. One of the songs I heard, it has a total 80s vibe. Now, is he a lifelong musician? How long has he been playing music?
Yeah, he is a lifelong musician. He's been playing music ever since I think his dad got him a guitar when he was in junior high. And he's been composing songs, many of which are still around since that day. What he really is, he's a composer, and he composes in many, many different genres. He does instrumental pieces. He does jazz pieces. He, for the longest time, when I met him, he was into beat music. Are you familiar with what beat music is? Yep. Sort of the Beatles, 4-part vocal harmonies, a couple of guitars, bass and drums, and then adult contemporary, all different kinds of music. And recently, his latest album is called Aqua, and it's got a very Caribbean reggae island vibe. And then he's also composed for other artists as well. And He just sort of swims in music. And I used all the musical terms that I know just now. So you can't ask me anything else because I'm just a fan.
Now, do you guys have kids?
We do. We've got a couple of teenagers, a 15-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter.
So you got a busy household. How is everybody dealing with the whole COVID lockdown, so to speak? Was everybody working out of the same house?
Do you have kids?
I have a 2.5-year-old son, so we don't really have to deal with it too much.
Okay. Let's see. Well, will he ever listen to this? My 15-year-old son has not seen a girl outside of the family in person in a year. You do the
math. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it is really difficult. So it's weird. It's a mix, right? I'll go back to this Gen Z thing. Even before the lockdown, both of my kids had rich social media lives. And, it's easy for us to say like, oh, well, what these guys are doing is they're playing video games. But if you kind of dig into like what the playing of video games actually involves, it's really these groups of young people who are socializing, communicating, playing out different scenarios and fantasies, interacting with each other, learning things about each other, having fairly rich conversations. A lot of these games involve a high degree of creativity and complexity. And so they were already kind of relating this way. And in that way, I've seen both of my kids stay connected and actually be, sort of pretty healthy in terms of their social interactions. Of course, there is no substitute for in-person. And of course, there are just challenges in the educational system, but it's not a loss. This is a time of great growth and learning, and a time when I'm seeing, especially folks in Gen Z, lead the way and do so with a lot of heart. They're teaching me how to show up. Like as a great example, my son and daughter are real familiar with, YouTubers and people who have podcasts and so on. And, they've helped me with my setup here helped me to kind of understand how to show up in a way that's attractive and how to have, good audio and just things like that I never would have had before. So I'm feeling grateful to them and I'm learning from them. And I'm also, deeply concerned about the future.
It's interesting because I just last week talked to the CIO from Zoom, and we were having the same conversation about millennials, Gen Z, and looking at my child, Johnny, he's 2.5 years old, to see him on an iPad is unbelievable. Our generation, we had to learn all those things. Now, this is just what these kids know.
Yes.
And there's nothing else that existed before that for them.
Right.
So the understanding of technology for them is just, I can't even imagine where technology is going with the understanding that these kids have now, because it's just going to, what's been done with the last couple generations with technology is just going to be wrecked with what they're going to do with it. I mean, it's just going to be so over the moon, with all the things they're going to be able to do. It's so exciting.
And right now in the IT space, I love this. I love IT. It's my sport. But right now in the IT space, we had this huge thing happen about a year ago where in every industry possible, people pivoted from working inside of offices to working remotely. And what really working remotely means is that enterprise IT technology and applications and tools are now living in a consumer tech environment. I'm connecting to you over my gaming computer, over public Wi-Fi, public internet. I might be using my smartphone. And so all of these technologies and tools and so on are swimming together, are playing together in the same ecosystem. As we move forward, as we go back to more hybrid work environments, hybrid school environments, we're not going to be able to extricate this in many ways far superior consumer tech and consumer tech experience from the enterprise experience or the educational experience. We've got to move forward together. We've just increased the size of our ecosystem, increased the complexity of our ecosystem. We still have to secure it. We still have to make it performant. We still have to take care around interaction design, et cetera. But we no longer control the boundaries. And because of that, it's a brave new world. And the people most suited to just slicking on into that brave new world are people like your 2.5-year-old who, for whom it's not a brave new world, it's just the world.
Yeah. And just, I was thinking while you were talking, imagine if this would have happened, the pandemic, 10 or 20 years ago, it would have shut down everything, right?
Yeah.
And in all reality, what it did was open up new boundaries.
Yes.
It just completely shoved them open, because with staffing, I talk with managers all the time. Well, will you look at a remote person? And many times they go, no, I got to have somebody in the office. I got to be talking to them every day. And it just completely flung that open where, when I'm talking with people that are clients of mine now, I'm like, it's not even a problem. Everybody is remote now. So, and it's been proven that they can be productive or more productive working out of their house, and they've got a better work-life balance. It's really an amazing thing. So as many bad things that have come out of COVID, there's just as many, if not more, positives. And when we do come out the other side of it, I think it's going to be, like you talked about, a brave new world where it's just like, wow, it's going to be a better life for a lot of people.
I hope so. It's a mix, like you say. Back to our original topic around diversity, the ability to work from anywhere and to connect jobs with remote workers, really opens up some diverse sources of talent for us across every industry, particularly in the tech industry where we have a shortage of talent. It allows us to have access to folks who might not have been, close to our geographic centers of technology like Silicon Valley, or people who might have to have offset schedules due to family responsibilities. So we can get access to these candidates. On the other end of the spectrum, there's a tragedy, but also an opportunity. I was talking with Mike Rowe, the guy who does
Dirty Jobs.
Yeah, I was talking with him, and he has a real passion for blue collar workers, and he was talking about the fact that the pandemic has disproportionately negatively affected blue collar workers. In the U.S., about 45 million people are unemployed due to the COVID pandemic. And they are disproportionately blue collar. And a lot of them are, for example, veterans who might have come out of active service and gone into blue collar jobs. These are folks who actually could fill many of our openings for technology jobs with almost minimal training and access to remote platforms. And so there's a real opportunity for us to sort of raise, the economic status of a large portion of our society if we have the vision and the capability to make those connections, and we look in places for talent that we haven't looked in the past. And so this is also a time potentially of shifting the diversity and the sources of talent of our tech workers.
That's awesome. It's a great thought, because if we can think outside of the box and have the vision to look past what has normally been done, like where I grew up in the Midwest, some of those parts of those small towns are just decimated, and they have been for a couple decades, so there's plenty of places like that where maybe, with this new way of living, we can go in there and maybe employ some of those people too. So it's a lot of food for thought, and hopefully some great things will come out of it like that.
Yeah, I think back to geographic disbursement. I love data. I'm a nerd. And so, we really track in my company, we track essentially where people are connecting to our infrastructure from. And we have seen, from the time that the pandemic hit till now, we've been all working remotely in our company, but we've seen a disbursement, from people mostly working in about 30 countries to people working in about 70 countries, from people mostly working in 4 or 5 states in the US to people working in all 50 states in the US. And again, once that's possible and once we see that that's effective, well, then we look for additional folks in any geography because we know that the model works from any geography. Just sort of teaching ourselves that lesson over the last year, I think is going to have profound effects on, if nothing else, middle America, where all of this talent and this capability is, but folks haven't had access to some of the jobs.
So talk about a little bit of what you're doing now with Nutanix.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm Nutanix's CIO. And so my responsibility is to ensure that our employees have the technology that they need to make them productive, and our business processes are supported by technology as well. And then I also have an external facing view. Nutanix makes a product for IT departments like mine. And so we also use our product. We're the, customer zero, if you will. And then we sort of talk about how we use the product, and we share that with folks externally. And so from my perspective, I am learning how to be both an internally focused CIO as well as an externally focused executive. And in our organization, we're doing the coolest stuff right now. It's this massive time of focus because of this time of remote work. So what we have done is we have created what we call a hybrid cloud. And what that means is that we've created a common foundation of our operating system and our hypervisor that runs on any hardware. So it runs on Dell, HP, Lenovo, et cetera. And so it runs on servers in my data centers. I've got 6 large scale global data centers. And this same operating system and hypervisor run in the public cloud, in AWS, in GCP, in Azure. And so you can imagine if you have an operating system, a thing like Windows, right, that's running the same exact operating system on pick a vendor's hardware, in any data center, pick a vendor's cloud, then you can start to do things like that like containerization technology imagines. You can start to write code once and use it anywhere. You have application mobility. You have access to capacity, to storage and compute and network that's close to your users. And you have the ability to start writing code and doing software-defined things that can be reused. And so in short, we've gone from completing about 5 to 10% of all of our work autonomously to now completing about 85% of all of our work autonomously. We are writing some really good operational code. We're deploying that code, and then we're flexing and using that code wherever we need to perform our services. At the same time, this is allowing the people on my team to begin to focus on higher level tasks, more impactful work that actually helps the rest of the organization and isn't just about keeping the lights on. And so as we're beginning to do that, we're finding that we're enabling employees to be more productive. We're getting engaged more in the business of the company, and how we can enable that business with technology and operational excellence. And so it's just been this time of growth and transformation and change for the technologists in my teams and the operational experts in my teams as well. And all of that's to the benefit of Nutanix, both using our own products and sort of using our own skills as IT folks. It's sort of hopefully good for our customers because we can offer our products cost efficiently, good for our employees and good for our families as well. And it's really nice to be in a position to be working in that way. Plus, it's cool to have enough time and enough focus and kind of enough control to let the ecosystem grow and thrive and develop and see what it's turning into, and then be able to share that with my peers across various industries.
So talk to us a little bit about infrastructure as code. Mm-hmm. That's what you do, right?
Yeah.
First of all, how long has that been around?
The phrase infrastructure as code is pretty new. I like to say that it is IT's version of DevOps. So DevOps is this thing where developers wanted to do things in the public cloud. And in order to do things in public cloud, like to do things in Amazon, if you want to write code, you're writing code to a server that exists somewhere. And so what Amazon does is it abstracts that server and it allows you to interact with that server via a software interface, right? So you can spin up an Amazon volume, and then you can, interact with that. You can write code, you can lay down an operating system, you can, scale it out. You can do all of those things, but you're never actually touching a server. There are actual servers in Amazon's infrastructure, but you're never touching those servers. All the things that you're doing via software, you're doing remotely, and you're creating the interactions that you're creating via software. And so we say that those are software defined things. There's software defined networking and so on. So back to what we're doing at Nutanix, we've looked at that sort of that DevOps view of the world. So the advantage of DevOps is that I don't have to wait for IT. I don't have to wait for provisioning things. I don't have to follow, arbitrary, rules and so on. I don't run out of infrastructure. I can just go ahead and get access to infrastructure, and I can run the workloads I want to, and I can scale. However, what tends to happen in DevOps organizations is that developers are really, really good at writing very performant applications, but they're not so great at creating efficient and performant infrastructure. And so public cloud bills quickly grow because there are all kinds of things that people do when it's sort of in their own data center in order to make efficient use of resources that they don't know to do in public cloud. So enter IT, the people who have been incredibly efficiently and securely running infrastructure in data centers, and they've got the operational process down. They know how to conserve electricity. They know how to conserve physical space. They know how to, virtualize systems and so on. And so now, how do we take those skills around operational excellence, and how do we translate those into operating instructions for remote infrastructure? Well, that's infrastructure as code. It's sort of the IT version of DevOps saying, we're going to compose infrastructure and run it, wherever we're going to run it in such a way that it is making efficient use, a cost-effective use of resource. And then because I'm able to do that, I can also interact with infrastructure very, very quickly, as quick as the machine can provide the instructions. And I can also augment those original instructions with additional machine learning capabilities. And so sort of wrap that all up together. Now imagine if you are interacting with that infrastructure as code, and you can use that same set of instructions for your own physical on-premises infrastructure or infrastructure in public cloud. That's an incredibly powerful model. That model is called hybrid cloud, and it says I'm able to run a single cloud, a single logical grouping of resources that are combined on-premises physical resources that if I wanted to, I could walk up and touch. I could configure a top of rack switch if I wanted to. And at the same time, I can issue those same instructions to the infrastructure in the public cloud. The case in point is a cluster. So at Nutanix, we have a product called clusters. I can compose a cluster of servers. I can compose a server that may have a node in my Reno data center, a node in my Phoenix data center, and a third node in AWS. And I can run that as a single cluster with the same code, and I can interact with it. I can do networking, I can do security, I can build VMs, I can do all of those things via code in a software-defined way, very, very simply and very performantly. I will tell you, during this time of pandemic, it's really, really helped my team to be able to do all of our operations, even our physical data center operations, remotely via code.
That's amazing. So is it a lot more cost effective than the old way of doing business? I would figure it is, right?
Yeah, on a bunch of levels it is. It's cost effective in terms of space and bandwidth and electrical consumption. It's also cost effective because I can choose the best place to run each workload. So if I have a workload that needs to scale out at particular times of the month, I can choose to run that scale out part of the workload in a more expensive public cloud environment. And on the other hand, I can run other parts of that workload that don't require scale out in a fixed capacity data center. It's also really cost effective with personnel, because ultimately our people, I don't need to have the HP experts and the Dell experts and the NetApp experts and the cloud experts. I have a single team who are expert in our cloud, our instructions, and they're running, very, very effectively.
That is so cool. Going to pivot just a little bit and wanted to talk a little bit about your team and the last year or so. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of 2020, none of us saw this coming. It was all rose-colored glasses. Life's going to be great, and then all of a sudden, COVID hits. It left IT in kind of a reactive but critical role. Mm. So what was your mindset when COVID hit in early 2020?
Well, funny you asked. So I had just had my all team on site the week before our shutdown. So I had people from all over the globe. We were all together in one place. And we had just spent a week together talking about the fact that we wanted to move ahead to actually implement a logical model of running a hybrid cloud. And so we had spent time together, we had mapped it out, we had talked about the potential benefits, we had taken a good look at our own current state, our own skills and capabilities, how we were organized, our roles and responsibilities, and we had really dug in and we'd come up with a starting plan. And then we all went to the four corners of the globe, to work. And so what was great about that is we very quickly discovered that the first things we needed to do were the first things we had planned to do. And we had some starting instructions for those. And in short, it kind of got down to, documenting and then implementing modern technologies, and then running, collecting data and improving. And so we were in that mode. And we also had some advantages. We were kind of fans of this model of working already. So at a high level, we were kind of emotionally, socially, mentally, and even physically ready. Although that's not how we had originally intended to work, or the reason we had originally intended to work. Now, I will tell you, as a leader, I agonized over this thing. I am a very I'm a very different leader when we're all in offices, it turns out, than I am when we're all remote. When we're all in offices, I really like to allow people the time to reach their own conclusions. I don't mind if there are mismatches in ideas or plans. I sort of like the mess of people working through the best ways to do things. But that didn't work for the team, and it didn't work for me when we were all sort of in our home islands. And I learned that I needed to be more specific, more directive, that I had to explain things very clearly, that I had to set firm priorities and communicate them. I also had to break our teams up into smaller teams, and teams that were focused on very specific, understandable goals. And so I had to do a lot around how I show up. I had to do a lot around how the team is composed, and then ultimately the miracle for me was really doubling down on working in an agile mode. And so I set priorities for the team. Every month we have a focus. I figure it's kind of like, for every party, there's a theme. You got to have a theme or it's not a good party.
Right.
So every month we have a theme, man. This month is automation month. And every single member of the team, no matter what their function, is in an agile, manner, has a story or two that they've written about automating something in their workflow and their environment, and they're working on that as a second priority. The first priority is KTLO work, keep the lights on work, and the second priority is automating things. And next month, the theme is monitoring, and we'll be working on monitoring, and creating those sort of super clear themes, and then creating a centralized, sort of agile methodology for defining the work, defining the priorities, has changed the productivity and also changed the happiness of the team. That's really different than how I was showing up as a leader a year ago. Meanwhile, my team members, they have these skills, they have these capabilities, they have their own ways of collaborating and so on. And they're continuing to thrive. They're continuing to use those skills and things. But I had to create an environment that made that, more possible.
Yeah, and sometimes, like in situations like this, we have to pivot, look deep inside ourselves, and figure out how we can be better leaders to our team. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Speaking of a theme, one of my next questions was, what's your theme for 2021?
I have trouble separating personal and professional in things like that. 2021 for me is a year of grace, both personally and professionally. It's a year of seeking first to understand and then to be understood. It's a year of going a little bit easier on everything from our institutions to my individual team members, to my kids, to the school system. I find that we need some margins right now as human beings and in society. There isn't a lot of value in writing people hard right now, or in calling people out, because there are so many elements of our success and our existence that are out of our control. And so I rely on God's grace in my life. I am trying to show up the same way in every other aspect of my life. And a lot of the time that means that I have to, exhibit humility. I have to ask forgiveness. I have to pause in my initial frustrated reaction and truly listen. And it's that's hard. It's exhausting sometimes to do. And it's different than the sport of being a C-suite executive, right? It's different than the past. In the past, we were really measured on outcomes and how decisive we are and how directive we are. And I sort of have a lot of those characteristics naturally. So I'm having to learn about just the grace that's necessary to show to all of my colleagues and team members and even customers and prospects and so on. And that has to come from a place of personal health and personal confidence as well. And so, it starts with looking at our own selves and seeing our own selves for who we are and saying, hey, that's okay. This is probably about as good as I'm going to get this year. I wish I could do more, but on the other hand, it's kind of pretty awesome, the stuff I'm doing right now. And hopefully I can help some other people with that as well. Every day I get up and I pray, may I be a help to my family, may I be a help to my team, may I be a help to my company, give me wisdom and strength, and thank you for your grace. And that's where I live.
It's a great theme, and it sounds like we're on the same track, because that's kind of the same thing I do every day too. I'm writing a book right now. It's also called True Ambition. And it really just talks about what you just said. Get up, do the right thing, do the best you can. That's really all we can do. There's only so many trips around the sun, and all we can really do is do good by our fellow human beings, and it'll just be provided to us if we do the right thing. So I appreciate that answer.
Thanks.
I had a couple more work questions, and one of them was a very interesting time right now because access to materials has been globally a really big problem. Supply chains globally have been a problem. What is your advice given these new roadblocks? Or what have you ran into?
I mean, in short, so we have this superpower in IT, and that is that we are this blend of operational excellence and technical excellence. And so we have had for 30 years or more a discipline called IT portfolio management, and it's a lot like a stock portfolio management, right? The idea is that you always have sort of a mix of things you can do. You don't just have a primary circuit, you have a circuit and a failover. You've got, 2 or 3 vendors who you rely on. And so I think we just extend out that model in these times. It's one of the valuable things about being able to, have a hybrid cloud, right? What makes that model so attractive is that, I've got optionality there. Look, if, a great example in my world is, we had an environment in one of our data centers where we were running Citrix, and Citrix was providing us with persistent desktops for a lot of our software developers. And as they pivoted to work from home and a lot less of them were in offices, they were connecting to our Citrix environment from home offices and a lot more of the time. And so I needed to build out that environment. But at the time, there were some supply chain issues and I couldn't get the servers that I needed for that. So instead, we rolled out a frame environment in public cloud in AWS. And that frame environment provided the same thing, desktop as a service. But it was another option in an environment that had that capacity for me at the time. So the complexity for IT is essentially, I'm not replacing one with the other. Now I have to run both. But if I can sort of open my mind to that optionality and offer both, then I no longer have those supply chain issues that are so impacting. And so it's just having a structure, an operational structure that allows me to, source and consume capacity and capability and so on from multiple sources, and then balance that. And some of the things we talked about, enable that for sure. But ultimately, it's having a mixed portfolio of options and being able to execute on those in a very operationally effective way.
That's cool. Yeah, I was, while you were talking about that, I'm just like, if you've got all those options and you're able to think kind of outside the box a little bit, there's all kinds of different ways you can go.
Yeah, I mean, again, taking a lesson from consumer tech, I just think about this a lot because we're in this, like, swimming in this soup of consumer tech and enterprise tech. But on my smartphone, I've got Facebook, and I do a lot of interacting on Facebook. Okay, but I don't say like, well, I've chosen Facebook and therefore Facebook is my social media standard. And there's no way that I would use Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or anything else because obviously I've chosen the one thing. No, I've got a whole mix of social media apps on my phone. And I don't need someone to tell me when to use which one or how to use them. I make those choices myself. Those are very personal choices. They're not complex. I don't need a map. That it's a very natural thing. And the same thing needs to be true in terms of the technology that we make available to companies and to our employees from IT. Employees will use the technology that's most performant for them, that helps them the most with productivity. It's for reasons like that. I run full Google Suite, Google Docs, all that, and I run full Microsoft Suite in my environment. And people have really strong preferences, one or the other. In the old days, we used to declare, we're something, we've picked one, and everybody who liked the other one, too bad, man, we're using one. That is so last decade.
Yeah.
Now what we do is we say, we're IT. It's our job to make sure that those two, chosen productivity suites are as well integrated and secured as we can make them. And then we allow people to choose. And I think that model, as long as you're controlling it granularly enough that you're not paying twice for those things,
right?
That model is actually, directly tied to employee happiness, which is directly tied to employee productivity. And the same measures exist in the consumer space, right? Has to do with adoption and use of applications and tools and so on. I always give the example of Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was an absolutely unique and never before seen augmented reality use of a mobile phone. And yet, when it was deployed, we didn't have to watch training videos. We didn't have to go to a class. We didn't have to have somebody explain it to us and draw on the whiteboard. All we did is we downloaded the app. In fact, 10 million people downloaded the app in the first hour and broke everything. And as soon as we started that application, we were catching all the Pokemon we could.
Yeah. How many years ago was that now? I remember people running everywhere to get the Pokemons.
Yeah, it was about 4 years ago, actually. And so, looking back to that, right, that was a completely different use of your mobile phone, the camera, there were adults playing games that never played before, right? And yet, what made that work? It was this excellent interaction design. And it was also this sort of notion that there's optionality around how we use the resources that we already have in our hands. And so that's the model for IT now.
Well, we look back at just thinking while you were talking about the Pokemon, and when I first moved to the Bay Area, I went down to Fremont, I think it was. I was living in San Ramon at the time, and I printed out a Google map or a Yahoo map or something like that, because that's what was available at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember driving down, and whoever the smart person was who put two different mission exits on, was it 680?
I know just what you mean. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I turned off on the first mission exit, and I just kept on driving. And then I was like, this isn't right. And it took me about a half hour to finally make it to the interview I was going to. But just so quickly, we move a couple years down the road, and my phone tells me exactly where to go. My GPS tells me exactly where to go. And there's no thinking about it anymore. I was talking to somebody else the other day about the fact that I still remember my grandmother's phone number from back when we had rotary phones.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody's phone number today.
I know what you mean. I still remember 227-2921, and it means nothing now.
Yeah, but it's just it's so refreshing to see the new improvements in technology and how much nicer it makes our lives. I don't have to think about it anymore. I just know that I'm going to the San Francisco airport, and somehow I get there.
Yeah, and I think taking lessons from consumer tech, I loved working at GoPro. I chose to work at GoPro on purpose. I wanted to work for a consumer tech company. And there I learned that it's actually super important for complex technology to be fun, and for the use of that technology to be fun.
And what a fun company that had to be, right?
Oh, so much fun. And so, I take that into the work that I do now, and that's a huge lesson for educators, for technologists. Human beings, we use it better and we use it more when the technology we use is enjoyable, is fun in some way, and so that's okay. And I think being able to blend those things and understand that, having an enjoyable experience while you are getting work done doesn't make you less productive. In fact, if it's human beings doing the work, it actually makes us more productive and more engaged.
So how do you expect your organization to change permanently compared to how your organization was set up prior to the pandemic?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm still learning. I have made changes in my org structure that were directly related to being responsive to the pandemic. For example, I created an end user computing group that just focuses on the end user computing experience, no matter where or how that experience plays out, whether it's on, an end user's mobile phone at home, or from a kiosk somewhere, or on a work issued computer. We care about that. I don't know if I need that structure forever, but I need it for now. And there's been such value in it. Maybe we'll keep it. So I'm learning. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do expect that we'll take all the data from the things we're doing now, and they'll inform the decisions that we make going forward. But there's some big new chunks of data that we're still waiting for, just to try to understand how the pandemic plays out, and kind of how, the thing I don't know that I'm interested in is how has this last year changed human beings, and what will it be like when we're in more, hybrid, more in-person environments? Just what will it be like? Because ultimately, the technology that we provide to folks will have to be, an augmentation to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic to bring up, because I think it's going to depend on the human being. There's so many people that I talk to that are so positive and nothing has really affected them throughout this. There's also a big chunk of people that are very pessimistic about what's happened. And there's a divide in the country, and there's just a lot of things going on where it's just, it's not worrisome to me, but it's worrying, for everybody. It's just, I wish that people could, like we talked about before, if the glass is half full, fill that thing up. Don't dump out the rest and sit there and, bitch and whine about the glass being empty. You just poured it out yourself. There's a lot of things that are out of our hands, but most everything in our lives is very controllable by us. If we can just sit there and, take the reins of what we do have control over which is just ourselves.
Yeah. And so it's kind of back to my thing about grace. Okay. So, grace doesn't exist without justice, right? Justice says, look, I believe there was a right thing and a wrong thing. Whether or not the right or the wrong thing happened, I'm moving forward in grace. And so I think that's a key for us moving forward societally is, I don't even know if that's a word. I hate that word. I hate that I said it. That's a key for us moving forward in society, is not the notion that, who cares? It doesn't matter, or like I'm on my side and I'll never think of, I'll never be on your side. That thing, that's impossible. Like we're never going to be on the same side. But it's this notion that even though there are sides and, by each of our own calculus, there's right and wrong. The higher good is for us to show each other and ourselves some grace in the situation, in the face of justice, in the face of rightness and wrongness and past hurts and past issues. Still, the only way forward is with grace. And I think that's massively important for us to practice and again, like, I don't know. I just don't know how that's going to play out. I comfort myself with the fact that, I don't think anybody knows. So, my way forward is as good as anyone else's right now.
Yeah. Amen to that. I totally agree. I stopped watching the news a long time ago. I've really tried to distance myself from a lot of the noise and really just count on the people in my community, my family, my company, my clients, and just the things that I can really have an effect on. And stay away from the rest of it. And it's really made a huge difference in my state of mind. And I really agree with a lot of what you just said. So what was your first job ever?
Oh boy. My first job was, my first job okay, that's tough. I had two first jobs. One, I worked at NASA Ames Research Center in the Space Biology Research Program when I was a junior in high school. And two, I sold shoes at Tom McCann shoe store in San Jose right out of high school.
And what did you learn from both of those jobs?
I learned my love for large systems at NASA Ames, and I learned that kids kind of suck on a few different levels from Tom McCann selling kids shoes.
Okay. Who was your best teacher ever, and why? I've
thought about this one, a lot. It's tough. I would say probably Mrs. Shannon, my 5th grade teacher, or Mrs. Bright, my 2nd grade teacher. You know what? It's Mrs. Bright, my 2nd grade teacher, because she taught me to fold my tongue, because all the other kids were like doing that thing where they roll their tongue, And I couldn't do it. And she said, well, let's see what you can do. And mm-hmm. I can hold my tongue, see? And so she said, like, you gotta go, sell that and see how many kids can do that. And she like taught me how to get out there and like own the cool thing about, who I am. And I've never forgotten it. It was like the biggest shot in the arm.
That's awesome. I love great teachers. I've got a couple of them, and I ask everybody that same question. So not long ago, you had a horrible fall, and you crushed your wrist and severed arteries and tendons and every bone in your hand, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Now, how many surgeries did you have coming back from that?
A couple of big ones.
So did you regain the use and feeling completely of that hand?
Yes. Although for 1 hour each day, I'm not responsible. No, just kidding.
It's like Thing.
Yeah, exactly. I did, but I had extreme pain. I went through a period of just feeling like it might not be worth it to wake up every day. And so although I had the use of my hand, it was at a cost, right? I had this sort of choice of we could sever the nerve bundle and I could not have the use of my hand, or it could be stitched back together in such a way that it was very, very sensitive. And so, of course, I chose the use of my hand, but it was months and months of a lot of pain. And in the first 6 months, I was on for 6 months I was on a significant prescription of Dilaudid, which is rich people do that, and people without prescriptions shoot up heroin. It was kind of that level. And so it was incredibly hard for me to decide to stop taking that. I did. And then I just had to figure out a way to manage pain. And so that was quite a journey.
So what were the lessons that you learned from going through that situation and that trauma?
I learned a lot. A big one that I can share that I think is relevant to folks is I learned about scar tissue. So it's really interesting, this thing about scar tissue. What happens is when you have a big trauma, your body, develops like this scar tissue, and it's very special tissue. It's very dense and sort of meaty tissue, and your body initially develops that to protect you and to protect that area of injury. But over time, once the underlying injury heals, that scar tissue becomes a burden to your body. It takes its unfair share of blood and resources. And so, it would be nice to just say like, okay, done with you, don't need you anymore. But what happens is it's very, very hard to get rid of scar tissue. And ultimately, I wanted surgery. I wanted all, because the scar tissue was very, it was impinging on my nerve bundle. The actual, stuff that originally developed to keep the pain from happening was now pushing on the nerve bundle and causing a lot of pain. And imagine my frustration and horror when I learned that the only effective way that doctors have come up with to get rid of scar tissue, because if you do a surgery to take it out, you form another scar and it's worse. There's no medicine for it. But what you have to do is you have to manipulate it. You have to push on it. Essentially, you have to rub it. You have to injure yourself a little bit, often, multiple times each day for an extended multi-month period of time in order to break that scar tissue down. And so what you essentially have to do is you have to, in little bits and pieces, feel the deferred pain that the scar tissue was created to protect you from in the first place. And it's the only way to get past it. And dang, if that wasn't like a major life lesson, like emotional, spiritual life lesson for me at the same time that I was going through the physical lesson. Because in life, we're so much like that. There's so many sort of, wounded, scared people who have the scar tissue of being bullies or being, abusers or being jerks. And yet the way forward is to sort of, sit in that pain and work through it and move on. And today I don't have scar tissue, and I do have the full use of my arm, and I have a little pain, but it's manageable. And it's the result not of some miracle drug or diet or something else, but it's a result of kind of experiencing that pain until I worked through it.
Well, the growth that you probably went through in having that trauma and going through that probably is you couldn't pay for that in going and seeing a psychologist. It's like the maturity that comes with something like that is just amazing. It reminds me so much of what I went through in a 12-step program. It's talking about sitting down and figuring out who you are for the first time and living through that pain. And when you were talking, it reminded me of one of the quotes that I use every day, which is, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And it's so interesting to hear the way that you had to deal with it multiple times a day to get rid of that pain, is you had to face it head on. And then now here you sit.
Yeah. Well, see, next time I need someone to give me the 12-step program information a little sooner. Thank you.
Well, I always say that's I'm grateful that I went through that situation, and I wish so many people that so many people or every person could go through the 12 steps, because it really is. It's just for life. I went into a 12-step program because I had a problem drinking. I didn't have a problem drinking. I had no problem drinking, but I had a drinking problem. I went in to quit drinking, and what I did is I went in to learn how to live.
Wow.
And it's something that saved my life. And, I like I said before, I've got a 2.5-year-old now. That's just because of that. It's because of what we talked about before, which is doing the next right thing by my fellow human beings, and God gives you everything you need. When you don't even know you need it.
I believe that, man. See, look, well, first of all, I am so thankful that you told me this, and congratulations to you, and look at the reward and the path forward with your 2.5-year-old. I mean, what an opportunity for you to continue to grow. I've got older kids, so I can tell you, being a parent involves continuous growth for you and your kid. We're called to be better versions of ourselves, like every single day with our kids, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you have such an exciting path ahead of you.
Yeah, I treasure it every day, and it's been a really great thing with the pandemic that I get to spend so much more time with him.
Yeah.
So it's like
he's not going to want to let that go either.
No, I'm not going to let it go. It's one of the things that I was talking about with Harry, the CIO from Zoom. Same thing. He said he was on a plane 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he's like, now I'm back. I'm working on my house. He goes, it's not going to go back to that.
Yeah.
There's no reason to go back to that. There's no reason to kill ourselves for these things that we can do remotely. We can do this kind of thing where we're talking to each other face to face, really, and we can see each other's emotions, facial expressions, everything. We'll still get together, human to human every once in a while, but it's not going to be the way it was before. And
plus, after this, I have salami and cheese right downstairs. So, yeah.
Exactly. So I have a couple other softball questions I like to ask to everybody at the end of this.
Okay.
So if you had to never worry about money again, what would you do with your life?
I would open a little bakery bookstore and bake food and talk to people about books.
Ooh, I would eat that food and I would read those books. Who is the person or persons in your life who most inspire or inspired you?
Right now, it's my kids. My son who has created this rich social world online. My daughter who has literally written a novel, found a real life publisher, and published it at age 13 during the pandemic.
What's the name of her book?
It's called A Shining Image. A Shining Image. It's by Holly M. Pfeiffer. Buy it. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And every dollar goes into her bank account. So yeah, and it's a good book too. The opening line of the book is "Hope is a distraction." It's kind of a young adult novel. So, I mean, my kids are really inspiring to me at a time where, as an adult, I thought, oh no, it's all going to end. They're thriving.
That's awesome. Well, what really gets you excited when you go to work?
It's the people, it's the team, and gadgets. I really like gadgets. The more the better. Since I can't go into work, we just bought a robot vacuum. So I'm just so happy.
Do you have a cat? Does a cat ride around on it?
I have two cats. One is aggressive and the other's a scaredy cat. And the scaredy cat has made friends with it and the aggressive cat is hiding. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means.
What was the most notable event that led you to where you are today? This can be over your whole life.
It's a series of small things. I wish I could say that it's something notable. I like to think of, my life, the navigation of my life has been like flying an airplane. When you turn autopilot on, the autopilot makes thousands of tiny course corrections every hour to keep the plane on course. And I feel like that's pretty much the way I live. I'm just making thousands of tiny course corrections. The way that translates, sadly, for my husband is that like every day I have a new idea. Let's move to Montana. Let's buy, the health club downtown that's just gone out of business. Let's go vegan like every day. So I just make a lot of course corrections, and I can't say that any one has really led to this, but it's the collection of all of them.
I think that it's really funny. My wife says the same thing to me. Just that I have all of these different ideas, and I think it's really. I'm not sure. It's the entrepreneurial. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's been that way my whole life, and I'm sure it has been for you too.
It's insanity.
It really is.
Yeah, I think the term is schizophrenia, but I'm not positive. But it's okay. I own that.
Yeah.
I own that.
Exactly. So I'm going to end it the same way I end it with everybody else. The True Ambition Podcast. I named this after a passage that I took out of a 12-step program book. That passage says that true ambition is not what we thought it was. True ambition is the profound desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. When I read that 5+ years ago, it kind of changed my life. Prior to that, my ambition was to get whatever John wanted, whether that was money, power, women, whatever it was. After that, I kind of changed my ambitions to help other people, look out for more than just myself. And when I did that, when I changed my perspective, good things started to happen. So my question for you, you've done a lot of amazing things. You've been a lot of amazing places. Knowing what you know now, being where you've been, what is your true ambition moving forward, both in your career and in your personal life?
In my career, my true ambition is to move more and more into corporate board service. I really feel like this role on corporate boards is one of help. I can speak help and wisdom into entrepreneurs and into company leaders that has oversized, overscaled results more so than I can in my own operating career. And personally, it's truly for my children and my husband and I to have, healthy, close relationships with each other as a family, and hopefully someday as an extended family, for the ages to come. I want us to continue to thrive and grow.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being here today, Wendy. It's been awesome. I think that we've learned a lot and had some good laughs, and I hope this helps out somebody who's watching today. So I appreciate you being here.
I do too. Thanks for having me. It was amazing. Thank you.
Okay. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to the True Ambition Podcast. We'll see you next time.
The True Ambition Podcast is brought to you by IT Avalon. For more information and links to other episodes, please visit www.trueambition.org. Now, go find your true ambition.